Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome to Talk Tuesday. Last week we talked about self-control. And today we're going to continue with that discussion with our book, How Children Succeed by Paul Tough. At the end of last week's lesson, I asked your teachers to send me an email of your brainstorming. And I got a lot of responses back. I wanted to share a few of those with you today. First, from Miss Bertrand's room, when asked, what can you do to develop your self-control? The student said, count to 10 and then think before you act. Another one that I really liked came from Miss Keene's class. She had her students come together and they came up with this. Substitute what we want with an alternative. So if there's something you really want but you know it's not that good for you, try and use something else instead. Another one, it's how you look at the challenge that helps you get through it. From Miss Green's class, create a self-consequence for yourself. That's one that her students came up with. It's as though you make a rule for yourself to keep yourself under control. And if you can't follow that rule, then you give yourself a punishment. That's kind of hard and harsh if you ask me. But if that's what it takes for you to follow your own personal rules, give it a try. In Miss Shank's class upstairs, they said, take a deep breath and decide if it is really worth it. That's an excellent idea. It's kind of along the same lines that they had in Miss Bertrand's, where it is count to 10 and think before you act. In Miss Steed's class, some of the 8th graders came through and they said, reward yourself. In other words, offer a reward for yourself. If you're able to stay under self-control for a certain length of time, kind of like a rule, then you can give yourself a reward because of that. I also got a lot of input from Mr. Carrasco, Mr. Chu, Miss Lefke, Miss Klein's, Coach Otto, Miss Davison's classes, and others. Thank you so much for sending this to me, teachers. I really and truly do appreciate it. Let's jump into our self-control portion from the book today. I'm going to do a bit of reading. Please bear with me and try and follow along. It's talking about the game of chess and self-control and how the two can go together. This is from chapter 3, which is titled, How to Think. The subchapter is called Sebastian's Blunder. Sebastian Garcia couldn't figure out where he'd gone wrong. One minute, he was up by a bishop and a pawn, in good position, feeling strong, looking to start off the 2011 National Junior High Chess Championships with a victory. And the next minute, he was in a deep hole and lots of trouble. His advantage was squandered, his king scurrying across the board like a frightened little mouse, fleeing his opponent's rook. A few moves later, when his defeat was complete, Sebastian limply shook hands with the boy who had beaten him, a sandy-haired kid from a central Ohio suburb, shuffled his way through the cavernous convention center ballroom where 1,000 heads were bowed over chessboards, and slunk back to Union B, the windowless conference room down the hall that was his chess team's temporary home. Sebastian, a short, stocky, quiet Latino with round cheeks and a thick bristle of black hair, was in the 6th grade at Intermediate School 318 in Brooklyn, New York. And 2 days earlier, along with 60 teammates and a handful of teachers and parents, he had traveled the 11 hours in a chartered bus to Columbus, Ohio, for a few days of competitive chess. His weekend was not off to a good start. The ritual for students on the IS 318 team was, win or lose, they would have to come back to the team room for a post-mortem with the school's chess teacher, Elizabeth Spiegel. Sebastian slouched into Union B and approached the small table where Spiegel, tall and slender, sat behind a chessboard. I lost, he announced. Tell me about your game, Spiegel said. She was in her mid-30s, dressed all in black, her pale skin made paler by the contrast with her deep, brightly dyed hair, which changed hues somewhat from season to season. For this tournament, she had chosen the deep vermilion of red velvet cake. Sebastian dropped into the chair opposite her and handed her his chess notation book, where he scrawled all his 65 moves, as well as the 65 moves of his opponent. The other guy was simply better than him, Sebastian explained. He had good skills, he said, a little plaintively. He had good strategies. Well, let's see, said Spiegel. And she took the white pieces and started recreating the game on the board between them, making each of Sebastian's opponent's moves, while Sebastian, as the black team, replayed his own moves. Sebastian and the Ohio boy had both begun by bringing out a couple of pawns, and the white quickly developed his knights, a standard opening called the Karo Khan, which they'd gone over in chess class back in Brooklyn dozens and dozens of times. And then the Ohio boy had pulled one knight back to an unexpected square so that both of his knights were attacking a single black pawn. Sebastian, nervous, moved another pawn up to defend, but he had stumbled into a trap. His opponent quickly swooped a knight down to capture the defending pawn, and just 4 moves into the game, Sebastian was down a piece. Spiegel stared at Sebastian. "How long did you spend on that move?" she asked. 2 seconds. Spiegel's face grew cloudy. "We did not bring you here so that you could spend 2 seconds on a move," she said, a steely edge in her voice. Sebastian looked down. "Sebastian!" He looked up. "This is pathetic. If you continue to play like this, I'm going to withdraw you from the tournament, and you can just sit here with your head down for the rest of the weekend." 2 seconds is not slow enough. Her voice softened a little. And this is the most important piece right here, boys and girls. The teacher says to him, "Look, if you make a mistake, that's okay. But you do something without even thinking about it, that's not okay. I'm very, very, very upset to be seeing such a careless and thoughtless game." That's exactly the point we're trying to make with you, boys and girls. It's okay to make mistakes, but to just go out and just do something without thinking about the consequences that could happen, that's where there's a problem. That's where the self-control was lost. That's why I like so much what Miss Bertrand's class and Miss Shank's class had to say. Take a deep breath and decide if it's really worth it. Count to 10, then think before you act. If Sebastian had heeded those words, he wouldn't have made such a careless move and lost his very first match of the tournament. The next several pages in the book go on to talk about the type of kids that always win these chess tournaments. Chess tournaments like this and the idea of chess are really popular in private schools, where a lot of kids with a lot of money go, and also in private parochial schools, which are church-based. You don't see a lot of poor kids playing chess. But IS 318 in Brooklyn, New York is one of the poorest schools in the city. And believe it or not, demographically, it looks a lot like Vivian Field. They go on here and show this list of champions. And this list of champions goes from kindergarten through 5th grade, and then 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. And all of the kids that are named here are from private schools where rich kids go. They don't show you the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. That's on the next page. Every one of the champions in 6th and 7th and 8th grade come from IS 318 in Brooklyn, New York, where the kids are supposed to be too poor and too stupid to be able to play chess. They've proven that that's not the case. They've done a little bit of study, put in some grit, used some optimism, and taken some self-control and become good chess players. Not just good, national champions. This is something that you can do. It would not be hard for you. All you have to do is take the time and decide, I'd like to play a little chess. But the question is, why do I want you to try and play chess? It's pretty simple, actually. Chess helps you demonstrate self-control. They call this the game of kings. And not just because it deals with the king piece, but because it was actually played by real kings. The idea is you have a strategic battle taking place. You capture their king, you win the game. It's very simple. The way that the pieces move also takes a little bit of time to learn it, but not too much. The idea of chess is you can learn it very quickly, but it will take your entire life to become a master. My challenge for you this week, to help you develop some self-control and slow down your thinking process, just like Sebastian should have, is I want you to download a chess game on your electronic device. I've already done this in 6th grade Avid, and a lot of my kids chose one together, and they can play each other even if they're not in the same room. I challenge you to do this right now. If you find that chess is something that you're interested in doing, Mr. Maroney said he would like to start a chess club here in our building. All you need to do is swing by and say, "Hey, Mr. Maroney, I'm in. Put me on the list." Give him your ID number, he'll find you again. Don't worry about that. Boys and girls, self-control is something you have to learn how to develop on your own. I can't give it to you. None of your teachers or your parents can even give it to you. You have to make the choice to develop your own self-control. You can do it. And with it, you'll have success. Remember from our lesson last week, the students that had more self-control did better later in life than the kids who were just plain old smart. The kids that are plain old smart, if they have no self-control, they didn't always have success later. But even an average kid, like me, with some self-control can really go high. That's what I want you to do, is try and develop your self-control. Thank you for listening. Hope you have a great Tuesday. Talk to you next week.